My mother slammed the document on the dinner table so hard the glasses rattled. "We've updated the will. Your name's been removed. You were never going to amount to anything anyway." My older brother Derek leaned back in his chair and laughed. "Did you really think you deserved a share?" I sat there, fork midair, every single eye at that table locked on me. But I didn't flinch. I almost smiled, because they had no idea what I'd been doing for the last 4 years. My name is Corinne. I'm 34 years old. I grew up in a mid-sized town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knows your family and your business before you even walk through the door. My family owned a modest chain of 3 local laundromats and a small commercial property downtown. Nothing extravagant, nothing fancy, but it was enough to make my parents feel important. Enough to make them act like they were building some kind of empire. My older brother Derek was the favorite, the one they always praised, the one groomed, since childhood, to inherit everything. My younger sister Tanya was the baby, the one who could do no wrong, the one who got coddled and protected from every consequence. And then there was me, the middle child, the quiet one. After community college, I got a job as an administrative assistant at a real estate firm. I answered phones, I organized files, I scheduled appointments. My family looked at that and decided I was the least ambitious person in the room, the one who settled, the one who would never be anything more than what she already was. But here's what they didn't understand about me. I wasn't flashy. I didn't drive a nice car or post vacations online, but while they were busy looking down on me, I was learning things about property law, about liens, about ownership transfers, about how contracts actually work. I had something they didn't expect: patience, knowledge, and receipts. If you've ever been the quiet one that your family completely wrote off, hit that subscribe button right now. I want to hear your story in the comments, because being underestimated is a superpower they'll never understand. Let's go. That dinner was supposed to be a normal family gathering. My mother, Patricia, had called it a week in advance, said she wanted to discuss the future. She used that exact phrase. I almost didn't go. Something in my gut told me to stay home. But obligation is a powerful thing when you've spent your whole life trying to prove you belong, so I showed up. I wore a nice blouse. I brought a bottle of wine. I sat down at the table like I mattered. The food was barely touched when Patricia stood up and cleared her throat like she was giving a speech at a company meeting. She announced that the family trust and will had been restructured. Derek would receive all 3 laundromats. Tanya would get the commercial property and the family home. And me? Nothing. Not even a mention. Not even a token gesture. Patricia looked at me with this expression that was supposed to pass for sympathy. "Corinne, honey, we love you, but you've never shown initiative. You answer phones for a living. We need to protect what this family built by putting it in capable hands." Derek nodded like he was agreeing with something deeply philosophical. "It's not personal, Cor. You're not business-minded. You'd probably sell everything and blow it on something stupid." Tanya didn't even look up. She sat there scrolling her phone, smirking, not even pretending to care about what was happening. I kept my voice steady. "So I get nothing? After everything I've done for this family? After covering shifts at the laundromats on weekends? After fixing the books when Derek messed them up? After handling the property tax issues last year that none of you even understood?" Patricia waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. "Anyone could have done that. That's not ownership material." Then Derek reached into a folder beside his plate and slid a printed document across the table toward me. A legal waiver. He wanted me to sign away any future claim to family assets. He tapped it with his finger and said, "Just sign it. Make this clean." I looked at that paper for a long time. My hands didn't shake. I could feel every set of eyes in the room waiting for me to cry or argue or beg. Instead, I folded the document carefully, placed it in my purse, and said 5 words. "I'll have my attorney look at this." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Derek let out a short, confused laugh. "Your attorney? Since when do you have an attorney?" I pushed my chair back, stood up, and walked out without another word. I could hear them laughing before I even reached my car. They thought it was over. They thought I had nothing. They were so sure of themselves. Within a week, I discovered the first betrayal. I tried to log into the family's shared bank account, the one I'd been depositing a portion of every paycheck into for 6 years. Nearly $18,000 of my own money sitting in that account. But my access had been revoked. When I called Patricia to ask about it, her voice was casual, almost bored. "That money was for family. You're still family, Corinne. You're just not part of the business." She had transferred the entire balance into Derek's name without telling me, without asking, without a single conversation. 6 years of my contributions gone with one signature that wasn't mine. 2 weeks later came the second hit. I went to my cousin Janine's baby shower because I loved Janine and I wasn't going to let family politics keep me from celebrating with her. But the moment I walked through the door, I heard Derek's voice carrying across the living room. He was surrounded by aunts and uncles and cousins, holding court like he always did. "We had to cut Corinne out," he said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "She has no head for business. She'd probably let the laundromats go bankrupt in a year." My Aunt Diane nodded and added, "She always was a little slow." People laughed, people I'd grown up with, people I'd helped and supported and shown up for. Not a single person defended me. I was standing 6 feet away. Some of them saw me. None of them cared. I left early. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. But I didn't cry. Not this time. The third betrayal was the one that cut deepest because it came wrapped in fake kindness. Tanya called me one evening, her voice dripping with sweetness. "I feel so bad about what happened, Corinne. I tried to fight for you. I really did. Mom and Derek just wouldn't listen." For a moment, a brief and foolish moment, I believed her. Then 2 days later, I received a group text that was clearly not meant for me. Tanya had accidentally forwarded it. It was a conversation between her, Derek, and Patricia from months earlier. And right there on my screen, in Tanya's own words, was the truth. "If we cut Corinne out now, she won't fight it. She never fights anything." Tanya hadn't fought for me. She had been the one who originally suggested removing me from the will. She had lobbied our mother for months, and she had been confident that I was too weak to push back. I put my phone down and sat very still in my apartment. The sound of the refrigerator humming was the only noise in the room. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't beg. Instead, I drove to the real estate firm the next morning and stayed 3 hours past closing. I pulled county records, I cross-referenced property deeds, I traced ownership histories and trust filings that my family didn't even know existed. My boss, Gloria, noticed the lights on in my office and knocked on the door. "You okay in here?" I looked up from a stack of documents and said, "I'm better than I've been in years." Every insult they threw at me, I turned into fuel. Every door they closed, I found a window they forgot to lock. Here's what. Nobody in my family knew about me. While they were calling me the phone girl and the paper pusher, I had spent 4 years quietly studying real estate law and property management. Not in some casual, hobby kind of way. I completed an online certification in property administration. I earned my real estate license. I studied contracts, trust law, and property transfers like my life depended on it. Because honestly, it did. What they didn't know was that the girl who answered phones had been reading every contract that crossed her desk for 4 years. I didn't just file papers, I studied them, I memorized clauses, I learned the language of ownership. And 2 years ago, when the family's commercial property hit a tax lien issue, everyone panicked. Derek didn't understand it. Patricia didn't want to deal with it. So I quietly stepped in and resolved it. But during that process, I found something nobody expected. My late grandmother Estelle had created a subtrust back in 2011. That subtrust placed the commercial property under a separate legal structure, and it named me, Corinne, as the contingent beneficiary. The detail had never been updated. It had never been overridden in the current family trust. Nobody had bothered to check because nobody thought it mattered, but it did. I also discovered something else during those late nights at the office. Derek had been mismanaging the laundromat finances for years. He was commingling personal expenses with business accounts. He was underreporting income. He was making cash withdrawals with no documentation. And because he had once asked me to help clean up the books, I had copies of everything. I had a plan they never saw coming. And the beautiful part, they handed me the evidence themselves. In my apartment closet, I kept a locked file box. Inside that box were the original property records, Grandma Estelle's subtrust document, every record of Derek's financial discrepancies, and one more thing. A letter from my grandmother tucked inside the trust paperwork. It was addressed to me. There was one person who saw me clearly long before I saw myself. Gloria Whitfield, my boss. She was a retired real estate attorney who had turned to brokerage work in her 60s. She was sharp, direct, and she didn't waste words on things she didn't mean. Gloria had watched me grow over 4 years. She'd seen my eye for detail, my ability to break down a contract faster than some of the licensed agents on staff. She once leaned against my office door frame and said, "You're the most dangerous kind of smart, Corinne, the kind nobody sees coming." When I finally sat down and told Gloria everything about my family, about the will, the waiver, the sub-trust, she listened without interrupting. Then she put on her reading glasses and reviewed every document I had. When she looked up, her expression was stone cold. "Your family made a huge mistake, not just morally, legally. That sub-trust was never dissolved. Your grandmother's wishes still stand, and your brother's financial mismanagement? That's potential fraud." Gloria picked up the phone that same afternoon and connected me with a trust litigation attorney named David Park. He was thorough, precise, and he didn't do favors. He agreed to take my case because the evidence was overwhelming. Meanwhile, my family was living in a fantasy. Derek started planning renovations for one of the laundromats, using family funds like they were his personal checking account. Tanya began redecorating the commercial property, measuring walls and picking out paint swatches for the boutique she planned to open. Patricia told every relative who would listen that everything is settled and that Corinne accepted it gracefully. Patricia even called me one last time. Her voice was soft, almost motherly. "I hope there's no hard feelings, sweetheart. This is just how business works. You'll understand one day." I paused for exactly 3 seconds before I responded. "I understand more than you think, Mom." Then the confirmation came. David Park called me on a Tuesday evening. The sub-trust was valid. The commercial property was legally mine, and the financial discrepancies in Derek's laundromat records were more than enough to trigger an official audit. David prepared the paperwork. Gloria sat across from me in her office, hands folded, and said 2 words. "It's time." I called Patricia the next morning and told her I wanted to have a family meeting to discuss the waiver they'd asked me to sign. I suggested we do it at a neutral location. David Park's law office. Patricia agreed immediately. She probably thought I was coming to surrender. They arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Patricia walked in first, her chin held high. Derek followed, a smug grin already plastered across his face. He'd even brought his own lawyer, a family friend named Ron who handled basic contracts and parking disputes. Tanya trailed behind, looking bored. Derek dropped into a chair and spread his hands on the conference table. Let's get this signed so we can all move on. David Park didn't smile. He didn't make small talk. He opened a folder and looked directly at my mother. Mrs. Lawson, are you aware of the sub-trust created by Estelle Marie Lawson in 2011? The color drained from Patricia's face. What sub-trust? David placed the original document on the table and turned it so everyone could read it. It clearly named me as the contingent beneficiary of the commercial property, the same property they had just given to Tanya. The sub-trust had never been legally revoked. It had never been challenged or overridden. It superseded the current family trust's allocation entirely. Ron, Derek's lawyer, picked up the document and read it twice. His face went pale. He leaned over to Derek and whispered, but the room was quiet enough that everyone heard it. This is legitimate. This was never addressed. Tanya's chair scraped against the floor as she jumped to her feet. This is ridiculous. Grandma barely even talked to Corinne. I looked at my sister. My voice was calm and clear. She didn't need to talk to me, Tanya. She saw me. That was enough. I reached into my bag and pulled out a handwritten letter. Grandma Estelle's letter. The one I'd found tucked inside the trust paperwork. I unfolded it slowly and read one line out loud. Corinne is the only one who'll protect what I built, because she's the only one who doesn't think she's entitled to it. The room went completely still. I could hear the ventilation system humming above us. Then I delivered the second blow. I placed a thick folder on the table. Inside was every piece of documentation showing Derek's financial mismanagement, cash withdrawals with no receipts, personal expenses billed to the laundromat accounts, income that was underreported by thousands of dollars. David Park looked at Derek and said, if this goes to a formal audit, it could result in tax fraud charges. Derek shot out of his seat so fast his chair nearly fell over. You've been spying on us? I didn't raise my voice. No, Derek. You asked me to fix the books, remember? I just kept copies. You handed me everything. Patricia was shaking. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. She turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, how could you do this to your family? I met her gaze and held it. How could you do this to your daughter? Silence filled that room like concrete. Ron leaned over to Derek again and advised him, firmly, not to contest the subtrust. Tanya was crying, mascara streaking her cheeks. Patricia couldn't look at me anymore. She stared at the table like she was searching for something that wasn't there. I stood up. I gathered my documents, I closed my bag, and I looked at all three of them one last time. I never wanted everything. I just wanted to be treated like I mattered. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Then I walked out. The smell of fresh coffee from the office lobby followed me through the door and into the parking lot, where the afternoon sun hit my face and I breathed in like it was the first real breath I'd taken in years. I took legal ownership of the commercial property within 30 days. I didn't evict Tanya's boutique plans immediately. I gave her 60 days to find a new location, because I'm not them. Derek repaid the misused funds quietly to avoid an audit, but the damage was done. Every relative who had laughed at me at that baby shower now knew the truth. His reputation within the family was finished. Patricia called me 3 times in the weeks that followed. I answered once. Her voice was small, almost fragile. I didn't know about the subtrust. Your grandmother never told me. I let those words sit in the air for a moment before I responded. Maybe she didn't trust you with it either, Mom. I lease the commercial property to a local small business incubator. It generates steady income every month. Gloria offered me a junior partnership at the real estate firm, and I accepted. I didn't win because I was louder or meaner. I won because I paid attention when no one thought I was watching. Being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's an open door if you're smart enough to walk through it. If your family ever cut you out from a will, from a decision, from a seat at the table, and expected you to just accept it quietly, I see you. Subscribe to this channel and share your story in the comments below. You're not invisible. Your silence doesn't mean you're powerless.